Imagine being miles underground. The air's damp, the rock walls are closing in, and the only way out is a narrow passage that you've just spent hours descending down. Then somewhere in the chambers above you hear it, the unmistakable roar of water.
Like, that's when the fear kicked in, all those reflexes you hear about, when people realize things are going really, like my stomach dropped, my legs got weak, like I started breathing fast, so I was like, this is bad. And the water was coming down it under such force, it was like a fire hydrant. It was like arcing out. You couldn't get anywhere near it. You would have been immediately drowned, basically.
In that moment, Hazel Barton and her team faced a choice. Climb into a pitch-black alcove to hope and wait, or fight their way out against the flood. What followed was a desperate struggle for survival, with lives hanging by the strength of a single rope, and the human anchor holding it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello and welcome to another episode of No Ordinary Monday. Thank you so much for joining us. I am your host, Chris Barron, and each week I sit down with a guest whose job is far from ordinary. We explore how they got there, what it's really like behind the scenes, and then I ask them to relive the single most unforgettable experience of their career. Now, if you're enjoying this show, make sure to hit follow or subscribe, and that way you won't miss any of the incredible guests we have coming up. Our guest this week is someone who's been described as the Lara Croft of microbiology, a scientist whose work has taken her into some of the most remote, unexplored caves on Earth, not just to map them, but to uncover the scientific secrets that hide in the darkness. Dr. Hazel Barton is a cave explorer, microbiologist, and professor who has spent decades balancing science with exploration. Hazel and I first met while filming a documentary series in New Mexico's Lechuguilla Cave, which is one of the most spectacular cave systems in the world. It's absolutely unbelievable. Hazel is an extraordinary presence underground. She's not just an amazing caver, but as you'll see, she's just a really fun person to be around. And as you heard in that intro, Hazel's big story takes us to a cave in China where a sudden flood turned exploration into a fight for survival. So stay tuned for a gripping behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to explore the world beneath our feet and the risks that come with it. On that note, just a quick heads up, some of the stories in this week's episode do talk about bodily functions and some mildly gross things. It's mostly in the first 10-15 minutes or so you can skip ahead and enjoy the rest of the episode if you're sensitive to that kind of stuff. And finally, just a quick technical note, we had some issues with the recording quality on Hazel's mic, so I've managed to clean it up quite a bit, but there may be one or two bits where Hazel sounds like she has a cold, but that's just the compression. So rest assured, we'll iron out these technical issues for future episodes. And with that, you're listening to No Ordinary Monday. Let's get into the show. Okay. Hazel Barton, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. I think the last time that we actually saw each other face to face, we were in New Mexico, Carlsbad Caverns, Lechuguilla Cave, on a filming trip. We were filming you doing some amazing work down in Lechuguilla.
And I remember you coming out of the cave, and we were down there, 9 or 10 days, something like that. I remember you coming out of the cave, and you did the last big rope drop, and that's amazing. That's just amazing. You get when you've been underground for a while, I don't know if you got it, but when you've been underground for a long time, there's no smells down there, right? The only smell is like other people, and it gets pretty foul after a few days. So once you start coming towards the surface, you start to smell like microbes in soil produce this compound called geosmin.
Yeah.
And it smells like fresh cut grass a little bit, a little bit like soily cut grass. And when you start to come out the cave, you start to get whiffs of that. Just like the whole surface just is in, I don't know, it must be like, suddenly becoming a dog and realizing other smells or something. And you're like, everything is super intense.
It was one of the most, I think, unique experiences of my life coming out there, because we've been over a week underground and it's musty and there is no smell apart from other humans. And you just come out, it's just life. It's like everything is just ratchet up like to 11 in terms of intensity of depth of smell and sights and sounds. It was amazing.
Yeah.
But the other thing, just on that, I think I listened to another podcast you on. You credited us with one of the must-haves in a caver's day pack. Do you remember what it was?
Was it you guys that came up with those?
Well, you said it was a National Geographic team that went to Lechkia, and it was us. We brought the Biffy bags.
You brought the Biffy bags. Those were the best things in the world. You can poo in those. You can pee in them. You can barf in them.
I think, we have to explain what Biffy bags for. I mean, basically, I think it'd probably be good for you to set up Lechkia quickly and why you need a Biffy bag.
Oh, yeah. It's an incredibly remote environment, and there's no, you're underground, and it's a special kind of cave. It's called a hypogenic cave, which means that it was formed by water coming from deep in the ground and getting pushed up. And so you force the water to spread out and make this incredibly long, complex cave system. So it's over 150 miles now, but there's not a lot of water in it. There's some pools that form where you have stalagmites and stalactites kind of dripping into the pools, and you can drink that water, but there's no water to wash, there's no water to flush, there's no bathrooms, and you can't leave anything behind because obviously that would have a remarkable effect on the ecosystem, right? The biggest organism down there is maybe some fungal spores. So you can't leave anything behind and everything comes out. And we were explaining to you guys how you deal with a number 1 and a number 2. And a number 1's pretty easy. But with the number 2, and until you guys showed up, because you've really transformed exploration in that cave. Until you guys showed up, what you would do is you take a big piece of foil and you create like a target, and you use the target of the foil, and then you wrap the foil up, and then you put it in 2 Ziploc bags. But it's a bit stinky, even though the foil is supposed to stop the smell, but it's a little bit stinky. And then you guys, you were so bougie, you showed up with these things that were called Biffy bags. And they were made of mylar, and so the smell doesn't get out. And they come with a little piece of toilet paper and a wet wipe so you can wash your hands afterwards. And it's got an enormous carrier bag inside with little straps on it, so you can open this thing up, open up the straps, and tie it around like a diaper and kind of cracks down. So you've got this, you don't have a target. Like, it doesn't matter what you do, it will get trapped.
It just falls down,
Yeah, it falls down, and then it's got all these polyethylene glycol at the bottom that could absorb like 50,000 times its own volume and moisture. So it just like goes. And then you close it up, you close up the big bag, and then you put your TP in there and everything, and close it up, and it's sealed.
I mean, I remember it's one of the stories I tell most often. It's kind of like, as an astronaut, how do you go to the toilet in space? It's kind of that kind of story. You've got to, in a scenario where you cannot, leave anything in the cave, what do you do about the toilet situation? And
I'm sure most people have stopped listening to this now.
Yeah, what a setup to who you are and what you do. But I mean,
well, it's like what's
caving.
I think it is important, right? It's like if you really get into rescue, right? I know we're going to go back to the scatology here, but they always tell people, if you really want to be into rescue, but you don't think you could bring yourself to wipe somebody else's butt, then you shouldn't be in rescue. And if you are interested in doing exploration, depending on the environment you're in, there's always something that you have to do that's not standard to what society deems appropriate behavior, and even what you would discuss appropriately. So, yeah.
I think, that's exactly right. I think that, as I said, you are you're an explorer, and we mentioned a little bit about that, and you're a microbiologist. But I guess, so I've seen you a couple of times, just to go into who you are and what you do. And there's a phrase that I've seen batted around some of the articles about you, and it says you are the Lara Croft of microbiology. And I just wanted to ask you, how accurate do you find that description of yourself?
From the waist up, terrible. She would never be an effective caver. She would get stuck everywhere, proportionally. No, I mean, I think, know if it's a misogyny thing or not. I mean, I kind of like it. When I was a kid, I wanted to be Indiana Jones, right? So
Yeah.
started to age myself, but when the first Indiana Jones movie came out, all my girlfriends were like, "Oh God, I want to snog Indiana Jones." I didn't want to snog Indiana Jones. I wanted to be Indiana Jones, right? I wanted to go
Nice. Yeah.
all over the world, speaking different languages, exploring things, and finding these discoveries. And this is so embarrassing. I even got one of the fedoras, right? For, I don't know how old I was, 12 maybe. I begged and begged and begged, and I think my granddad gave me a fedora for Christmas, which is funny because,
Oh my God, that's so cute.
yeah, no, granddad probably wore a fedora in the 40s, but yeah, I just wanted to be Indiana Jones, and so when I got older, the first time I was in the newspaper, someone called me Diana Jones, and I thought that was kind of fun because it was like I hadn't really even thought that it's not like, I wanted to be a fireman and then I spent my whole life working towards being a fireman. I wanted to be a vet when I was little, and I was working,
interesting.
professionally towards becoming a vet. So the Indiana Jones is more of like a fun fantasy. It's something is certainly not like I've decided I'm going to be this thing and spend a career working towards it. It's just one day I woke up and other people were kind of like aligning me with that, stereotype. But I wanted to be a vet, and I read that the best way to become a vet was to volunteer at veterinary practice. So I did it for 4 years. And at the end of 4 years, I was like, I would rather die than be a vet because it's 90% cats with diarrhea and it's dogs with diarrhea. And the thing that was really fun, I mean, helping with the surgeries, like towards the end, I was so experienced, even though I was only like 18 or 19, that I was helping with the surgeries, nothing more than like mopping up blood and putting bits in buckets and things. But the thing that I thought was so cool, and this is after we just spent the first 5 minutes talking about poo, maybe people are going to judge me on this, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Pus is just so exciting. So
what?
Yeah, the first time there was a cat that came in and its whole face was swelled up. There is a point to this. I'll get there, but its whole face was swelled up, and then the vet said, "This is the first time." The vet said, "Oh, this is an abscess. We need to drain it." So he just kind of grabbed the cat's head and took a scalpel and just went just really fast, and the pus jumped like 4 feet to the other side of the table.
Whoa.
And the cat just went, and the cat was super relieved. I was like, wow. And then I heard this enormous clang, like someone was ringing a bell. And we both looked over, and the owner had fainted with the pus, and it was their head hitting the radiator. And I was like, this is awesome. And so I don't know where becoming a medical microbiologist came from. Is experiences like that as like, being a vet is not a lot of fun, but these microbes are freaking awesome.
Wow. How old were you then?
Oh gosh, 15, I think, maybe 16.
15. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So you're still at school, still at high school.
Yeah.
Oh well, you were in the UK at that point, weren't you?
Yeah.
You
so I was doing my O levels then. I was on track to becoming a vet. I discovered boys when I was doing my A levels, so that kind of derailed it. But at that point, I wasn't as focused on becoming a vet as I had been. But definitely the microbes. There'd always been a fascination with that. But that was it. I'm going to be a microbiologist.
Wow. So that's when it started. And where, I mean, you've come a long way since then, obviously. But what would you describe yourself as right now?
So my PhD is medical microbiology. So I got my PhD back in 1997. And then I went to work for a guy called Norm Pace, who was a caver. But he was the guy who figured out that you could use this enzyme that Tom Brock had discovered in Yellowstone Another lab had figured out that you could amplify DNA with it, and Norm figured out that you could use these amplified DNA fragments like a barcode to identify organisms in the environment. And Norm likes to say it blew the door off the microbial world, and it did. I mean, everybody knows about their microbiome now.
It's amazing. I mean, microbes are everywhere, literally everywhere you can think of. Even like nuclear reactors have microbes.
Yeah. It's and it's good too, because they're, with macroscopic life, you could wipe out all life you could see on the planet, and our biosphere would just keep ticking along. But if you wiped out all microscopic life, our biosphere would collapse somewhere between 4 to 7 days, and then all life on Earth would get wiped out. So they're really small, but they're very good at what they do. Anyway, I worked for Norm, and he was a caver, but I worked with him on tuberculosis, which is a fun project. And then I got involved in an IMAX movie. And the IMAX movie was like, well, we want you because of your skill set, but we want you to do environmental microbiology. And of course, I was in Norm's lab, which is an environmental microbiology lab. And then we're like, okay, well, we'll go look at caves. And Norm was like, well, go for it. You can do the kind of caving that most people can, and you have a PhD in microbiology, so go figure it out. So then I became a cave microbiologist and started my own lab. I did that for almost 20 years. And then that was in a biology department, but we were creeping towards geology. So we're looking at microbes in caves, and so they interact with rocks and minerals. And most of what we were doing was so geology based that it was actually hard to get. It was hard for my students to get their PhDs in biology because what they were doing was so geology orientated. And then I got offered a job at University of Alabama in the geology department. So now I'm, in a long story, I'm actually a professor of geology, even though that all started out with like pus leaping out of the face. Yeah.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I mean, just going back, like you said, that sort of seed of inspiration in microbiology was planted in that room when you were 15, seeing the big pus sprout from the cat. But
I wish it was a cooler story than that, right? I mean,
that's a cool story. It's pretty visual.
Like, I brought a vial and it was green, and suddenly my life was changed. It's like, no, this really disgusting thing happened.
It is funny. But the seed of the caving, like that was planted around about the same time, wasn't it, when you were in your teenage years?
Yeah. So when I was 12, we got taken on an Outward Bound course where they take a bunch of city kids. There was a gaggle of kids, way too big of a group for the single adult that was taking us around, right? Never do that these days, but so we like 20 kids and one adult. And we had this really sketchy kind of lights and helmets. And one of the kids, his light went out and he was kind of getting left behind. And I'm like, well, let's just share my light. And so I took my light off my helmet and we were kind of sharing it to see where we're going. And it didn't faze me at all, whereas everybody else was pretty terrified. So I don't know, I just felt super comfortable in that environment. And I think a lot of people who explore caves have the same kind of scenario. It's an environment that you either immediately love, not necessarily in explainable ways, or you hate and you never want to go back. It's cold, it's muddy, it's wet, you can't see, it's climby, you can fall. Some people are like, this is not
very dangerous.
But other people are like, this is just like a 3D jungle gym. I just want to go explore every hole.
Maybe a lot of people listening to this might be curious. They may have never even been into a cave, let alone a wild cave. Can you visualize or describe the emotions that you experience when you're entering a cave for the first time, or going into a deep part of a cave, unexplored cave, or just being inside these spaces under the ground? What's it like for you?
I mean, the best feeling in my life is to go into a cave, find a big hole, and not know where it goes, and then explore and map it. You've probably played video games where the video game is like there's a map that as you explore a dungeon, the map gets built over time. So you don't know where everything is, but the more you explore around, the more you build that map so you know where everything is. Caves is just like that. So it's and the stuff you find. I mean, the incredibly beautiful environments. You went to Lechuguet, you saw some of the best cave passage in the world. Just imagine walking into that. Nobody knew it was there, and then you walk into this incredibly decorated room. It's really beautiful. It's like art. But the thing is, a lot of times you get skunked, right? For every time that you find that one amazing passage, you might get skunked 20 times. And I think that if it was easy and you always found great stuff, I don't think caving would be as much fun. It's the trial and error and all that effort and time and building upon knowledge to make those breakthroughs, I think, is what is really part of the discovery and the fun.
Just to sort of give listeners an idea of the purpose of the work that you do, like, what kind of applications or what kind of discoveries are you hoping to uncover?
And that's the nice thing about, so we call it basic research. And I think when you say basic research, a lot of people, because that's jargon, right? I mean, it's a specialist term that means the fundamental underpinnings of how things work. So when we talk about basic science, it's like what are the fundamentals? And so we're trying to understand the fundamentals of caves and cave forming processes. And some people are like, well, I don't care about that. That's not important to me. But those fundamental processes teach us things about microorganisms that have some really remarkable applications. We think we've figured out how to recycle nylon, because we've seen ways that nylon is being broken down in caves by microbes. So we have a novel. And you think about, you see all those fishing nets and the turtles getting caught in the fishing nets in the ocean. You can't do anything with nylon. You can't recycle it. It's a terrible plastic. It's microcrystalline. It's very hard to use. It basically gets shredded and dumped in landfills. We think we can actually break that down and turn it back into a fertilizer. Again, looking at how microbes in caves work. Another thing we're doing is understanding how microbes in caves can segregate different kinds of metals, because some metals in rock are toxic. So when they're in the rock doing their thing, this came from some work we were doing in Brazil, on iron caves in Brazil, is that they can actually segregate something called a rare earth element. So these are elements that are in very, very low supply, but are incredibly critically important. Right now, I think China's just recently prevented sales to North America rare earth elements. Well, they're used in, batteries and chips, microprocessors, rare earth magnets. I mean, our entire
those technologies need it.
And that's again from how microbes make caves in Brazil. So it's all it's like people are right. Why should we fund science? This is like, who cares? And it's like, you don't know how or why you care, right? And I think this is why, like this attack on, scientists and expertise and everything, like, well, I could figure this out. It's like, you could, but it would take you a lot longer to do. And AI is not going to do that trick for you, right? The ability of expertise to see patterns. And this is part of the teaching someone to get a PhD, is like helping them, like, how do you take complex problems, break them down into testable solutions, and then use your knowledge to find those links that build it all back together. And then you end up with novel carbon sequestration technologies, ways of getting rare earth elements out of rock. So, yeah.
Before you jumped on this podcast, I asked you to think of a story across your long career that kind of stood out as significant and sort of, for one reason or another, stands out as a highlight, or something that was scary or exciting or significant. I wonder if you could share that with us.
Yeah. So we talked about a few things, and being a cave explorer, there have been more than one occasions where I thought I was going to die. And so those definitely stand out. I should say that, nobody goes into a cave thinking they're going to get into trouble. I don't think anybody would do that. There are certain people that think it's about adrenaline, and it's not. One of the issues we have is water. A lot of people have lost their lives in caves because of water, and you do have to be very, very cognizant of it and aware of what's going on. And so for us, we were in China, and we were exploring a big cave there. It's called Chonko, and it has a ginormous entrances that was like, I don't know, 100 meters high and 40 meters wide, just going right into the mountain. So we were exploring that cave over many, many years, and it splits. You follow this enormous river into the passage, and then it splits about 200 meters in. You go to the left and you go up something called the wet side, and that is pretty terrifying. There are waterfalls and strainers and everything. It looks like a class 5 rapid to get up this thing, and then ends in a sump. In the other direction, you go and you traverse a bunch of pools, and then you climb up, and then you get into this dry passage, this dry borehole, and it is ginormous. It's some of the biggest cave in the world. And so we were working on this dry side, and there was this big pool of water, and I don't think we ever sat down and was like, where did this pool of water come from? But anyway, you could swim across the pool of water, or you could do this traverse. And the traverse was really super sketchy. It was super smooth, and the footholds, there were barely any footholds. There was certainly nothing to grab onto with your hands. You just had to lean into the rock and trust your feet and kind of step around this thing. And I hated it. And I said, we need a rope on it because someone's going to fall off. It wasn't a big fall. It was like 6 feet, but you were going to, take a pretty big splash into this pool of water and then end up swimming across. And my friend Mike would always laugh. He's like, come on, Hazel, we're practicing for the real thing. I was like, hated this damn traverse. So we get up, and we're pushing the cave from 2 different directions at the time.
So this is unexplored. This is unexplored at this point.
Unexplored, but we're checking holes in this whole mountain, right? So this is this big kind of pointy mountain in China, and you could walk up around this big entrance, and it had a big passage that went in for like half a mile, and then there was a hole in the floor, and you threw a rock down, and it took 13 seconds to hit the ground. Which is,
oh my God,
which is ginormous. It's like 800 plus feet, right? So, but
I mean, yeah, just to give people a sense of that, like, have you got a stopwatch or something? I can just count it here actually.
Yeah.
And just throw it, put a picture in our head, throw it in for us.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, you're going to do the bang, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I got the rock. I'm walking up to the side of the pit. Ready? It's a big one.
Okay, yeah.
I can barely handle it.
All right.
Hang it. Ready?
Right, stop clock.
I'm going now.
Yeah. Boom. Wow.
It's more like boom. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. So
basically you throw a rock down and the entire cave just reverberates.
Yeah, after a very long period of time. So we knew it was at least 200 meters. So it was going where we were going upstream in this big passage. It was going right towards where that was. So the next trip, somebody went down with a rope, and we came up the dry passage from below, and we actually connected in that room. And it ended up being the 3rd biggest room in the world. So the ceiling was 400 meters, so 1,200 feet high. That pit was 934 feet, I think, something like that. And we connected in the middle. And one of the things we did en route was there was this huge lake that we had to traverse around. So the person we were with, who was a sketcher, didn't want to get cold. So we actually put a rope up against the wall so he could traverse around without getting wet by wading through this lake. And this will come in important later. So we decided to do this big trip. It was going to be 24 hours. And we were going to go in that entrance and then connect it up into the big room. And then we basically have found a route through the mountain. So we went in, and it's China. So there's no way you could get a weather report. And we weren't that worried because we were in the dry side, so we didn't have to worry about it. So we went in and we started surveying, and we were able to connect it up to the main passage, and we found some other passages heading off. And it was like, gosh, I don't know, 2:00 in the morning or something at this point. And then we're like, well, we've still got some hours. What are we going to do next? And somebody said, well, you know where that really big lake was? There's a big passage heading off into the wall there. It's about 20 meters wide and about 5 meters high. No one's been in there. Why don't we go survey that? Like, okay. So we walk all the way down, through the big room, past this big lake into this passage. And we're surveying it till about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. And they were like, yeah, we should probably leave now because the bus is going to come get us. It's going to take a couple of hours to get out. We're coming out of this passage and we kind of duck under and go into the big room. And then you can hear waterfalls. And this is a passage that's been bone dry whenever we've been in there. And we were there with Duncan Price, and Duncan said, uh-oh. And that's like that's when the fear kicked in, you know, all those reflexes you hear about, you know, when people realize things are really, like, my stomach dropped, my legs got weak, like I started breathing fast. So I was like, this is bad. That Duncan went, uh-oh. And
he's the guy he's like the expert caver.
Yeah.
If he says uh-oh, you know it's serious.
Nothing phases this guy, right? Nothing. It doesn't matter how horrendous the situation is. He's just happy. And he's like, uh-oh. And so there was a wall of water coming down the passage towards us. And
oh my God.
We had like just a few minutes to make a decision. And there was a high kind of level passage we could get up to. And basically we would have to stay up there until whatever the water was coming through had flushed through, or we could try and fight our way out, knowing where we were and knowing that there was this upper entrance through the big room. So we decided to try and fight our way out because we didn't know how high the water was going to come and how long it was going to stay high. So
yeah, because if you go to that high spot, you could be waiting there, and the water could just keep climbing, and then
coming up.
You would drown.
Yeah, there was no guarantees. And it turned out that then we suddenly realized what that big pool of water was from. It was that this was an overflow passage. So what was happened is that wet side with the sump basically had become so inundated with water that it could no longer drain the river going into the cave. So that river had backed up and was now going into the cave from a completely different direction. And that direction sent it barreling straight down the passage towards us. So
your exit basically was the overflow.
Yeah, our exit was now like a class 3 river, a big class 3 river. And so we were kind of forcing our way upriver against the wall, kind of holding, like imagine you were if you were in a big river, or getting behind rocks and being in the lee side of the rocks and trying to get out behind that. And we get to this one spot where it was an easy climb down when it was dry, but it was like an enormous sluice. And it was about 2 meters wide and about 3 meters high. And the water was coming down it under such force. It was like a fire hydrant. It was like arcing out for about 2 meters before it came down, right? So you can imagine almost coming horizontal before it starts to bend down. And it's like you couldn't get anywhere near it. You would have been immediately drowned, basically. This thing would have just had so much force, it would have just pummeled you around. So Duncan was like, let me see if I can find a way around it. And he jumped over the top of this thing and disappeared. And then about 6 or 7 minutes later, a rope came down, just a rope. And you could hear Duncan say, climb. And so Mike climbed up this rope. So we have these mechanical ascenders we use to climb up. So Mike went up the rope, and then he yelled, climb. And then I think I came up the rope, and I get to the top of the rope, and what I saw was a meat anchor, which probably not going to mean anything to anyone unless you're a climber. So there was nothing to rig this rope off of. So what Duncan had done is tied it around his waist and had jammed himself into this alcove And Mike had basically
Oh my
climbed
God.
up using him as the anchor. And then as soon as Mike had climbed to the top, Mike had thrown himself on Duncan to give Duncan more support. I came up and saw this, yelled down, rope free. And then I piled on top of Mike, and we were basically holding
Oh my
Duncan
God.
in the area. And then we got to the top of this thing, and it looks we can just about see a way out, and we've got to do this traverse. And it's on a super slick slope that's angled with very poor footholds and no handholds. And it looks exactly like the traverse that I've been complaining about all the way, because Nemesis that I'd always managed to climb across, but I'd hated it. So I was like, oh, Jesus. And Mike turns to me and he's laughing hysterically. And he said, look, I told you we were practicing for the real thing. So
is this like basically like Ninja Warrior, but if you fall, you die.
You die. There is no, you're gonna fall about probably 5 or 6 meters into that hydrant. I mean, it's certain death if you slip.
And then you're just being shot like a rocket out of the worst water slide in the world.
Yeah, you're not surviving that. I mean, you probably you might have a 50% chance of surviving the fall, but the last few seconds you're going to be miserable. So then we get out, and there's this other pool where we'd rig this high traverse line, which we'd rig about, I don't know, 4 meters off the wall so that we could stay dry. And it was now underwater, and you could swim over to it and use it to pull yourself across. And then we got out. Yeah. And then we climbed out into that big room, and we could see this new river of water that suddenly everything makes sense, right? All the passage sculpting and everything that we saw just suddenly made sense about why it was the way it was. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I have PTSD from that, because I've been flooded in a couple of times since then. And there's a couple, and I just react very differently than everybody else, even if it's not that particularly bad of a flooding event. So I do think that, it's a funny story, and I love to tell it to people, especially when I've had a couple of beers. But there's still, I mean, it was pretty terrifying. Yeah. And it was one of those moments afterwards where it's like, wow, I can't believe I made it through that. So yeah, water is not fun in caves. And, you can tell this story prior to the cave rescue thing, and people will be like, yeah. And now they're like, why the hell are you in there?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So what were your emotions like? Obviously, before the climb, when the rope came down, and obviously doing that scary Ninja Warrior section, what was going through your mind?
I think just to keep one foot going in front of the other. I get asked this a lot, because there's not a lot of people that really truly have like a near. People be like, I had a near-death experience. There was a close one on the road or something like that. But for me, it was like really being frustrated with my body. That my body, it's the fight or flight thing, and I was just kind of frustrated with my body. That I thought, you always imagine that, like, when the shit hits the fan, I'm usually pretty calm and collected. Like, if I'm the expedition leader and something terrible goes wrong, I just immediately fit into that, like, team lead role and just start making decisions and things like that. But in this situation, I was a follower, not the leader. I wouldn't have been a great leader in that situation anyway. It was not my skill set. But I just thought that I would be more heroic in the moment than I was. And I think at the time I was disappointed in myself for not being more of a hero. But you can see why people under, terrible situations, I don't think anyone has any right to judge anyone when something goes wrong about like how they reacted, because a lot of times it's completely out of your control. It's just comes down to hormones and physiology at that point. So that was that was the thing that I think afterwards it was like, I can't believe I'm alive. This is a whole new world for me. I must admit, when I came back to the airport, I came through Chicago and had my earbuds in, and I can't remember. I got off the plane and I was just walking through the airport in Chicago. I looked around me, and it was almost like Neo in The Matrix, You look around and there are people having entirely different lives with entirely different priorities and experiences around you. And you're like, there's not a lot of people that are, well, it was lucky or stupidity to have experienced those kind of things and what a life is I live. And I do whenever I get down and things aren't as great and I get frustrations at work and stuff, I do try to step back and remember that feeling of euphoria, being alive and being fortunate enough to live that kind of lifestyle. And I know it's a privilege and the right, and it's one that I fought very, very, very hard to have, especially as a woman in a male-dominated sport. But that's getting better. I think some of the best cavers in the world are women now. So it's
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think you're better or worse off after an experience like that?
Oh, always better, unless it goes wrong, and then you're way worse.
Unless it goes wrong, yeah.
Yeah,
but it's almost that you have to push it to that point to feel alive, as you just said.
Yeah, but that gets into that whole adrenaline junkie thing. I don't know if it's that. I think that we have to be willing to take risks, right? And we're talking about people changing careers and things like that. My husband, he changed careers. Well, he's a perfumer. He's always been a perfumer, but kind of jumped and went into a different company. And it was a very, very scary thing to do. And he just loves everything there is. And so, yeah, I think, being risk averse in any form, it's understandable. But, I think we, maybe as a society, that's something we've lost a bit. That's why people are so focused on social media and living vicariously through other people. And maybe there's a little bit of loss of willingness to go out and do those things. Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. Brill. Well, that's absolutely mind-blowing story. As you say, very important to take risks, but not to hopefully push it too far. But I want to sort of bring it back out again to your sort of career, big picture kind of stuff. What are, I guess, the best and worst parts of the job that you do at the moment?
As a university professor, worst part's administration. I think that's the thing is that, I'm more like a conductor in an orchestra now than a, first row instrument player. So there is a lot of administration, my job is to make the role that my students play more efficient so they can be more successful. Because ultimately, a lot of what I talk about, these findings, these discoveries, those are not my hands in the lab anymore. I haven't been in doing experiments in a long time. So the worst part is administration. It's certainly manageable. I think I make it worse for myself by putting things off. The best part, there's a lot. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy seeing, in the classroom and also in the lab. It's hard to become a scientist. You have to change the way you view the world. So people talk a lot about light bulb moments, and that seems like a cliche, but you do really see transformational events in thinking in these students, whether that's in the classroom or in the research lab, where things suddenly come together and they make those connections, and then there's a dramatic increase in their understanding, expectations. So that is pretty amazing. And then, obviously, the travel, the places I've been in the world, visiting caves.
Yeah.
So now I think 37 countries, maybe 38 or 39, both poles, all 7 continents. And cavers are just great. I mean, cavers are, there's a certain mindset to want to go do these things, to want to take those risks, to want to lie in the cold and the mud and the wet. And it creates kind of a camaraderie where everybody just gets it, right? You don't have to try and explain yourself. It's always very difficult to explain to non-cavers why you want to go do this, especially when you talk about accidents and incidents. And so those meeting those people, making those connections is pretty fabulous. So I have a very privileged life. I have a lifestyle that was, I came from a working class family with no expectations beyond like working as a secretary or something like that. And I had a fantastic grandfather that opened up science to me. And, British TV, right? Some of the documentaries I got to see when I was a kid. Even got to work with David Attenborough. That was pretty wild.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a life goal right there.
So yeah, and I get paid well, right? The university professor, it's like, there's a lot of work, but you get to be your own boss and you get to think, and that's a real joy. So yeah.
I mean, I had this question in mind just about your particular lab, and I'm sure that you going into a lab like yours, you need to, for some of the roles, you need to be both a caver and a scientist. And I was just wondering, do you think it's harder to be a scientist that learns to be a caver, or do you think it's harder to be a caver that learns to be a scientist?
Well, how interesting. I think it's harder to be a scientist that learns to be a caver for one really easy answer, and I think that's that cavers are curious. So I have a lot of. I think everybody that in my lab right now came in as a caver, right? That's why they want to come work for me, is that they're cavers and they want to get into cave science. But these people are self-motivated. They're, curious. They're always asking questions. I mean, all the things that makes you a classic explorer, right? Is basically there's not a lot of difference between that and science. So I don't think it's hard to teach anyone how to be a caver. You just have to do it, right? It's pretty easy to do. Take a tour in a most showcase have a wild cave tour. Take it and see if you like it, and then just find a caving club and go. But the only reason I say it's easier to take a caver and turn them into a scientist is just because of the way that their minds work. And I think that's Norm had a lot of, Norm's a super famous microbiologist. He's won about every award out there, been nominated for the Nobel Prize twice. And, he says he likes hiring cavers because he just likes the way the cavers think. And so maybe I'm a little bit biased in my response because I've always had that feeling. But yeah, it's curiosity is all that science is. The difference between science and caving is just location.
Interesting. I guess they're both forms of exploration, science and caving in their own rights. And for anyone sort of in that space, explorers and stuff, who might be wanting to follow your footsteps or, get into academia or just listening to you now and want to do what you do, what kind of advice would you have for them?
Just go caving. You can find, if you go to any country in the world will have a caving organization in it. In America, you'd go to caves.org. I think in the UK, it's ecra.co.uk, but every nation has a caving organization. And as far as science, I think the important thing to think about when you think about careers is not what it is you want to be, but what it is you want to do. And the distinction is, like, some people say, I want to be a doctor, but they don't necessarily think about what the day-to-day in a doctor's life is. Is that really what you want to do? Like, when you get out of bed in the morning, what's the thing that's going to make you jump up and be excited to go do your job? And that's the thing, right? So you got to figure out what it is you want to do. And so for science, is whatever is interesting. I've been pulled in multiple directions, and now I'm a geology professor because I just kind of followed my nose, what was most interesting to me at the time. And I think that's the important thing with science, is to, not let anyone say, well, you should be an engineer because you're going to get paid better. It's like, are you passionate about engineering? Are you curious? Do you want to jump out of bed and go do an engineering thing? And there are many people that do, and they love it. But if that's not you, then you need to figure out what it is that motivation is.
Well, fantastic, Hazel. Just to wrap things up, is there anything that you would like to plug on your own behalf, or is there anywhere else that people might be able to find out more about you or follow you on social media, anything like that?
No. Leave me alone.
No, leave you alone.
Leave me
That's
alone.
absolutely fine as well.
Sciencey stuff. If ever anybody wants to fund our research, I've got tons of students that would appreciate some funding to explore some of this stuff. And they can always find me by Googling me. But yeah, no, I don't have any pluggables. I should have a book or something, shouldn't I?
Yeah, you should have a book.
Oh,
You've got tons of photos.
We have a photo book on Lechuguilla. Do you know this?
When was that made?
When did that come out? I think we published that in 20
before or after our trip.
Yeah, it was way after the trip. 2022.
Oh, after, yeah.
Yeah, it was. It's called Lechuguilla. What is it? I've forgotten what we called it. Hillary. No, I don't even have it on the bookshelf. That's terrible, isn't it? It's something like Explorations in a Hidden Splendor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Explorations in a Hidden Splendor.
Yeah. I should have thought about having.
Did it have any photos?
I'm going to be on a podcast. Does it have? Sorry.
Does it have any pictures from our trip, or is it from all your other expeditions?
No, we didn't have any permissions for your photos, but it's the other expeditions. You should check it out. You'd love it.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's kind of a coffee table book of photos, but what we did was have people talk about what it's like to camp in the cave, what it's like to do exploration in the cave, what it's like to climb in the cave, what the latest cave science is. So it's a little bit more. There's like 14 chapters or something that are like, vignettes. They're 2,000 words or something about it. But a lot of people have said it's a lot of fun because we try to write it for a general public. So a lot of these books tend to get written for cavers, but this one we try to write for the general public. So yeah, I do have a pluggable.
Bro.
There
you go. Amazing. All right, Hazel, thank you so much for your time. It's been fantastic speaking with you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks a lot.
And that is it for this week's episode. A huge thanks again to Hazel for sharing her incredible stories from a lifetime underground. And a big thanks to you all as well for listening. For photos, links, and more about this episode, head to noordinarymonday.com and look for the episode page. You'll also find our socials, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and more. Next week's episode takes us to the chaos of a film set. My guest is David Wrigley Williamson, a good friend of mine and also a special effects artist who has built everything from exploding buses for Jackie Chan, giant spaceships for Star Wars Andor, and I may have also convinced him to have his wisdom tooth extracted under hypnosis for a BBC documentary once. So yeah, we'll get into that. Hit subscribe now so you don't miss it. If you'd like to share your own career story with us, we'd love to hear from you. Get in touch via our socials or email hello, HELLO, at noordinarymonday.com, or use the submit your story page on our website. And if you enjoyed this episode, please do 2 really quick things for us. Click 5 stars, and if you have time, write a little review for us. That would be amazing. And the other thing is tell a friend, and that's it. It really helps us grow the show and attract more amazing guests and inspires new listeners. This show is produced, hosted, and edited by me, Chris Barron. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great Monday, everyone.